Thanks for staying with us. It was 2 years ago, February to be more precise, the Vice President, made a comment about the need to step up our activities in terms of security. He said this back then. There's a lot going on in terms of trying to beef up security. The security situation is one that is very challenging. Then he says, we're looking at aspects of surveillance. How we can do more aerial surveillance using drones and electronic devices to improve surveillance. And a number of people have come up with all kinds of things, including phones. I would say, you know what, in case there are some rustlers coming from wherever, there are some technology that's able to detect that. But the one we are talking about this morning is one which Dr. Olushola Ayola, a robotics engineer, has devised, and he's here to discuss with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
First of all, is this a big deal? Some would have said, look, did we have to wait until now? This was supposed to be a no-brainer.
Yes, well, the use of drones is not a big deal globally. It's been used for photography, it's been used for surveillance, maybe for geographical surveillance and all of that.
And movies.
And movies as well, thank you. It's not a problem. Although we know that when it comes to military operations, there's a lot more to just flying above the ground. You need to have endurance, you need to be able to last longer in air and so on, go higher. To higher altitudes. But then what is peculiar in this case is the application. It's not enough to just fly a drone that can see what's going on ground. What if the terrorists are under a canopy of, forest? Or what if they are in a cave? Because that's the peculiar situation we are facing, where it's difficult to track because everybody can hide from an optical camera. So the case here is then, okay, how about we deploy something that is like a sniffing dog, a dog that can sniff out where people are hiding. And that, in that case, is the use of carbon emission tracker, because every human activity emits carbon monoxide. I'm talking about cooking, transportation, combustion of, generator and all of that. Okay. And that's the peculiar angle we are coming from.
But how is this, for want of a better word, peculiar? Because, in various communities, in the hinterlands, there are always pockets of communities like that where they have these carbon emission things that you talk about. So how will we know? My grandfather's farm settlement, for instance, it's very, very far from town. And there are pockets of communities like that all over Nigeria, farm settlements and all of that. So how will we know which is which? How do we know that this is not a farm settlement, is a group of
terrorists
to want to...
Well, when it comes to the deployment of AI, there is no single aspect of intelligence that can capture everything. We have to bring in human intelligence, geo-intelligence, signal intelligence, and all of that. Now, what this is able to do, and I'll explain very quickly here, if you have a large expanse of land, a forest, and you want to scan, you could use an optical camera. In fact, there is the thermal airborne optical sectioning imagery now that can help you, that uses heat signatures to tell you who is under a forest canopy. But before you can use that technology, you have to zero into a particular area. So the idea of knowing which particular spot within a forested area should be surveyed critically needs some level of carbon emission intelligence, where you can say, well, from this entire forest, this seems to be the spot generating the highest amount of carbon, which is human activities present there. And then you can then zero in to use other intelligence to see what kind of activity is there. Then, of course, there's the human intelligence where troops can tell you that, oh, that particular zone, we haven't been able to penetrate that place. Oh, clearly then, the people who are probably there are not friendly people. But we're not saying that with carbon emission, we already can tell that these are terrorists. But with carbon emission, you can tell that there is a human enclave or a human settlement in the midst of this thick forest. Now, who they are, what they are doing there would be left to other aspects of intelligence. So it's that collaboration that this helps to bring together.
So it's not precise. It doesn't give precision in terms of pictures.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
So even in the absence of, your carbon emission tracker, it's a no-brainer that drone technology is, a game changer in terms of, this peculiar types of investigations. So that makes me ask, I beg your pardon to draw you into the conversation about security. Should it be tenable that because we cannot use force, because the terrorists are using the victims as human shields, then we cannot use force, to go capture, to go rescue those who have been captured? Doesn't that speak to an absence of strategy?
It does, actually. The reason is this. Fine, whichever technology you deploy, there will be a loophole to it. If it's weaponry, if it's operational intelligence trying to attack, they will definitely know how else to prevent. Even we've seen in case of hostage taking, where a criminal host, keeps a lot of people in the building and says, we're going to stay here until you get out of the way, give us a van to drive away. And the security agencies have to provide those things. The next thing will be, what level of intelligence can you deploy to counter that eventually? So in this case, with humans as shield, fine, you can't attack. You can't just throw a bomb onto that kind of territory. What has to be done, therefore, is to use other technologies that can subdue everyone in the building without killing anyone, and then you can then pick out whoever it is that needs to be picked up. But then precision, again, is important, because you need to know where exactly these people are.
You talked about the need for collaborative intelligence with this carbon emission, this thing. Now, so is this carbon emission tracker you're talking about, is it a first item or a second item or a last item in the chain?
Okay, it's the first item. So here you have a drone that has a carbon emission tracker and an optical camera and a thermal camera as well. So with carbon emission tracker, you're able to survey an entire space, an entire forest area, and zoom down to one spot, a hot spot, for example, that gives the highest amount of carbon emission. And now you can deploy thermal imagery, which is the next phase, to see what kinds of activities are going on there. Do we have human beings? Are they within an open space? Are they lying in the forest? And that's where this idea of thermal, airborne, optical sectioning comes in. Then after that picturing, you now want to see exactly what kinds of activities are going on there. You can deploy normal camera visions now. Now, these are the three things that can be on one drone.
On one drone?
On one drone, yes.
What's the range of reach? How far? But I ask that because, for those who want to perpetrate evil or any dastardly act, they also have some form of intelligence in their head, so they know the sound of a drone, for instance, and all of that. So that means for this to escape them, it has to be quite far. So
yes.
How's the range?
With carbon emission, we can track it up to 3 kilometers altitude. So it's not a problem, because typically you want to fly at maybe 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. But even up to 3 kilometers, you can still get, and there is a lot of research work already, paperworks that have been done to study the trajectory of carbon monoxide. So even at these altitudes, you can still pinpoint which part of the ground generated that particular carbon emission.
So that's it?
So that's the carbon emission tracker?
Yes.
So if you were to present this to the Ministry of Transportation, for instance, that has taken over the negotiation, it has said we haven't seen anything in that regard. We have seen a private negotiator helping to release the victims. So if you were to present this to the Ministry of Transportation, what are your assurances in terms of the deployment of this carbon emission tracker to help identify the location of these Abuja-Kaduna travelers, the remaining victims that are still with the terrorists?
Well, when it comes to things like security, a lot of considerations have to be made. In a negotiation, for example, I wouldn't expect the ministry to try to bring in an attack. For example, we can find you if you don't cooperate with us. Rather, at this point, they will have to then negotiate on the basis of a kind of win-win situation for both parties. I'm talking about the government and the terrorists in this case. But then going further, the use of this technology would provide no hiding space or no hiding spot in the forest area. So it can be something that will be deployed in areas that are still not as hostile, for example, as the Kaduna-Abuja environment. So if we can deploy this ahead of time, then criminals would know that there is no hiding place. But in the case of negotiation, that has to be dropped. Like you drop your weapons, for example, when you want to negotiate, so everybody can feel like they can win-win. So I believe that's the way to go about it.
Chamberlain?
Well, yeah, this is a very, very interesting and lovely feat, so it's good to see some good things coming out after all. But, I remember when I was in Israel, the IDF there did tell us that they were eventually able to develop this technology that, yeah, that's for you. They were able to develop this technology that they can actually see the tunnels that are being dug, drive from above the air, and listening to you, it means that there's a huge hope for us moving forward. But in terms of scaling this, are you in touch? Has anybody reached out to you, say government, state government, federal government, any agency whatsoever? Do you need support to ensure that we take this to the next level and the country benefits from what you're doing at the moment?
Yes, thank you very much, Chamberlain. And now, to get this to the next level in terms of scalability, there has to be some level of cooperation between the RAIN, that's where I belong, and the university environment, the research institutions that have the capacity to keep this ongoing. And of course, the interest of those in the military sector, the research agencies within the military. Now, that discussion is what we are waiting for. That discussion is what we are expecting to happen. But I believe, first of all, that just by mere looking at what we are proposing, brains within these agencies, brains within the university environment and the military research institutions can already start looking into this. So even if I'm not communicated with in the future, it's expected that somewhere there is some research going on to actually bring about these technologies. It's not the innovation of a drone that is new to Nigeria, nor the use of carbon monoxide, like you rightly said earlier, but then the deployment, its application. Although I must say that there are a number of AI algorithms that still need to be run after the use of these data collection systems to then infer where these people are and what kind of activities are going on there. So hopefully that discussion will come up. But right now we are still expecting that to happen.
What would you tell those listening to you now who equally want to get into this field, they're trying their hands on inventing one or two things, and they're facing a lot of frustration, so much brick wall. They just want out. In fact, they want to leave the country and go do something elsewhere or achieve their aims elsewhere. What would you tell them if they were to move forward in this country?
Thank you very much. I'll tell them, you can only excel where there are problems, because that's where you get opportunities to deploy your solutions. So if you are the best in your field, or you want to be the best in your field, you still want to have access to people that need these solutions. So you might want to travel abroad to get the knowledge, or you might want to stay in Nigeria and look for places to learn, but always look at how you can solve problems within Nigeria and bring that solution home. I would say this because I've been in the UK, I've been in the robotics environment in the UK, but I deliberately came back to Nigeria to make sure that all my solutions are tailored towards solving Nigeria's problems. But I must say that many of those that have these skills are already been taken out of the country, because AI is still very new globally, and countries want the best when it comes to that. So we have a role, government has a role to play when it comes to keeping these educated people, these skilled people within the country.
On with tertiary institutions about some of these things now in terms of our curriculum? Are we adjusting it? Do you know if any information is going through to ensure that they produce or help or contribute a great deal to moving this forward so that we can have it in different areas of the country?
What I know is going on in the tertiary institutions is the development of innovation centers, centers for excellence. We have that in Federal University of Technology, MENA, in OAU. UI also has the Fab Lab donated by the French Embassy and so on. Now, that just means that universities have come to realize that this is a fast developing field, robotics, AI, cybersecurity, and so on. So rather than add that to the curriculum, which of course is, takes a while to review, they have created centers that students can actually walk into, learn as co-curricular activities. And that's good also because there is no exam to write, after these ones. And students, well, the youths of today like things that they are not compelled to do, things they do out of their interest. So if students can take advantage of centers like this, and if more of these centers can be spread across the country, in fact, technological parks, across the country, people can actually develop more skills on their own without having to write an exam in the university for that.
Well, for now, let's come back to the field now, from school back to life. Because this is a clear and present challenge for for every government, federal or states. What would you be telling state governments, for instance, who are probably watching you right now and saying, look, is there any way they can use this, irrespective of whether or not the law, does not permit state governments to, they don't have authority to legislate on security? But is there anything state governments can do?
Yes, I think the very
How
first
can this be
thing,
useful to them?
The very first thing state governments need to do is to come together and speak to the Office of the National Security Advisor to perhaps allow the use of drones in border towns. And that's because even if you don't carry weapons, intelligence is the greatest weapon. We rely a lot now in Nigeria on human intelligence, but what can the local farmer tell you if he hasn't got the vision to see what's coming 2 kilometers away? So if local communities are allowed, for example, to fly drones, governments in the states can then train a number of people across the borders to keep monitoring the borders. I mean, that's a plan by one of the state governments anyway, but that has to be spread across. Because if everyone knows that, fine, there is no hiding across the borders of every state, then we can have more security. And governments must train those who would fly the drones, those who would use the drones, and those who would get the data and process that.
Do you have capacity to produce these equipment in high volumes? I'm suspecting that some of the things you need to get them done, I mean, should this conversation happen, and as Chamberlain asked you, the whole thing is scaled up, is there the in-country capacity to multiply production?
Well, yes and no, but I'll say yes. Why? Because Nigeria is still a tech growing country, young tech growing country. We still have to import some things. For example, the motors that would spin the propellers. We have to import the microcontrollers, the boards. But that's not a problem, because you can easily import all of these things from any other country and without even anybody raising an eyebrow. It's when you import an actual drone that people can say, hey, what's this? What are you going to use this for? For someone that knows how to build a drone, for example, he would import a microcontroller board from one country, import the motors from another country, and you won't even know he's building a drone. And that, I believe, can be done very quickly. But the use of intelligence to design a drone is localized already. We have a number of people, even people who are out of school. I'm sure you must have heard about the young man who got taken abroad to Finland because of his capacity to build a fixed-wing drone. Yeah. So we have that in surplus. So we can do that. We have capacity to fabricate parts. I mean, there's a lot of 3D printing factories across the country today, and fabrications as well. So that's possible. And the good thing about drones is that they have to be very light. So any capacity to get carbon fiber, for example, you already have a frame for a drone. And we can do that very quickly.
You know, Chamberlain asked you a very significant question about what counsel you would provide to, young Nigerians who would like to go abroad and make a life for themselves. Now, you also referred to your time in the UK before you returned to Nigeria. Now, if you had no option of, going to the UK and you had to study in Nigeria, would Nigeria have given you the platform, the educational, quality and technical know-how to empower you to build this carbon emission tracker?
Well, the simple answer is no. Honestly, I'll tell you that for sure. I mean, I graduated and I was still asking myself, what can I do now? I'm just an engineer with a first class, but I still have no practical skill. But going to the UK, I could see now that a university could actually have like a factory environment where students can actually see what they are learning in practice. So I decided that, you know what, back in Nigeria, we must have more of this. You may have noticed that software development, software engineers are very many in Nigeria because it's easy to learn on your laptop. But when it comes to hardware, people haven't got a place to go to get inspired. So that's the kind of environment we are creating in Ibadan, and that's the kind of environment that we hope more people would have access to. That is where they can get, because people come to my office, for example, to my laboratory, and they say, wow, is this possible in Nigeria? Can this be done? Are you serious? But by the time they see how basic all of these technologies we really think are so far reaching they can quickly get inspired to do more. And that's
with the knowledge, with the knowledge that you have now acquired, can you create an environment where you can build capacity, train youths to be able to build what you have built?
Yes, I have already done that 3 years ago, and that's what we are doing at the moment. But it's not big enough. It has to be spread across the country, and that's what I think we should do. But right now, for example, we have trained over 200 people. So what I can tell you now is that, and out of that 200, we have about 50 people that are experts in drones and robotics. Half of them are abroad at the moment anyway, because when you train people, they can quickly get opportunities abroad. But that's happening. We need more of this to happen in Lagos, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, Kaduna, and co, so that we can quickly get this country to the next level.
Well, we can only wish you the best and hope that, as you have said, this will be scaled up to the benefit of Nigeria, not just for home use, but let's also have some things to export, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Olushola Ayola, robotics engineer and founder, Robotic and Artificial Intelligence Nigeria, RAIN. Thank you so much for your time and all the best.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, yesterday we talked around sports. Today, let's talk about football.